has been awarded to Andrei Pochobut from Belarus and Mzia Amlagobeli from Georgia. So both are journalists currently in prison on trumped-up charges simply for doing their work and for speaking out against injustice. Their courage has made them symbols of the struggle for freedom and democracy. And this House stands with them and with all those who continue to demand freedom. In a few moments, we will hear an address from Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya and Sergey Tihanovski. Their presence here today reminds us of what is at stake and why this Parliament will never back down or look away from injustice. I also want to acknowledge the other Sakharov finalists who will be invited also in December here, namely journalists and aid workers in Palestine and students in Serbia. I thank very much the political groups for their nominations and the members of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Human Rights Subcommittee and Development Committee for their work. The award ceremony will take place here in Strasbourg in this chamber during the December plenary session, and all the laureates will be invited. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, today we are joined by our friends and global inspirations, Sergey Tihanovski and Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya. Dear Sergey, it is an honor and a joy to welcome you after 5 long years of brutal and unjust imprisonment by Lukashenka's regime. This House has been calling for your freedom since day one, and it's so good to see you finally free. Dear Sviatlana, as a long-standing friend of this House and an outspoken voice both for Sergei's freedom and for the freedom of all Belarusians, it is an honor to welcome you to the hemicycle once again. Now, for the first time, both of you are here together in Europe's House of Democracy, reunited and ready to continue your shared fight for a free Belarus. Thank you both for agreeing to address our House today, because yours is an incredible European story of endurance and the struggle for democracy. And this House applauds your courage and fortitude. Just minutes ago, I announced Andrei Pochobut from Belarus as a winner of this year's Sakharov Prize for Freedom of Thought, together with Mzia Amlagobeli from Georgia. Like you, dear Sergey, Andrei was imprisoned under false charges and tragically is still jailed. And as members of Belarus's democratic opposition awarded the 2020 Sakharov Prize, I am sure you both can appreciate this prize's importance in recognizing Andrei's work and his plight. Today, this House sends the clearest of messages to Andrei Pochobut, to all those still cruelly and unfairly imprisoned by Lukashenka's regime, and to all Belarusians still hoping and pushing for a free, democratic future. The bonds that bind us Europeans cannot be broken, and Europe understands that the age of dictators is over. Over the last 3 years, members of this House, many of you, have sent hundreds and hundreds of postcards carrying messages of hope and support to Belarusian political prisoners. I wrote one personally to Sergey. Last year, this House signed a letter of intent on cooperation with the Belarusian Democratic Forces, which deepens our collaboration and condemns the acts of Lukashenka's regime. Now, dear friends and colleagues, we must build on this momentum and push for the release of the over 1,200 political prisoners still behind bars. And as you say, dear Sviatlana, we can't stop. We have to keep working. So, Sergey, Sviatlana, your vocal defiance and your presence here today are proof that the fight for a free and democratic Belarus is alive and strong. Europe stands with you and will continue to support your efforts. Long live Europe and long live free Belarus. I now pass the floor first to Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya.
President Roberta Metsola, Vice Presidents, distinguished members of the European Parliament. It's such a great honor to start the speech with such wonderful news. My sincere congratulations to Andrei Pochobut, his family, and all Belarusians. Of course, my congratulations go to Mzia Amaglobeli as well. I wish to thank ECR and EPP for nominating Andrei Pochobut for the Sakharov Prize. I want to thank everyone who voted for his candidacy. Andrei is a Belarusian Polish journalist, became a symbol of resistance and personal enemy of the dictator. Before hearing his verdict of 8 years in high-security prison, he said, "I'm going to prison with clear conscience. I always knew that when times like this come to Belarus, I will end up in prison." Awarding the Sakharov Prize to Andrei and fearless Mzia Amaglobeli from Georgia sends a strong message to all political prisoners that you are not alone, and journalism is not a crime. As German parliamentarian Manuela Rothmann once said, "Today, heroes are not in the movies. Heroes are in prisons." And Andrei and Mzia are one of them. So my congratulations, it's really big victory. So, dear Roberta, thank you for your kind introduction. I don't know if you remember, but 5 years ago, in those days of our peaceful revolution, you were one of the first leaders I met. We had just won an election and tens of thousands were already detained. And you told me then, "Don't give up. Keep fighting no matter what. We will always be here to you." And you kept your promise. From the very first day, the European Parliament stood on our side. While governments hesitated, you acted, denouncing Lukashenko's fake legitimacy, calling for sanctions, promoting visas and possibilities for Belarusian people. Together, we signed a memorandum on cooperation between the European Parliament and Belarus Democratic Forces, showing that Belarus' rightful place is here in European Union. You took bold, unconventional steps that will be remembered in history books. Thank you. And I want to thank each parliamentarian who adopted a political prisoner, signed a postcard, joined a solidarity rally, voted for resolutions, and defended Belarus' right for self-determination. Thank you. I want to thank the delegation on Belarus, its amazing chair, Małgorzata Gasiewska, and the standing rapporteur, Helmut Brandstetter, for their leadership and bringing Belarus voices here in Parliament. Also, I want to commend Lithuania and Poland, our closest neighbors and allies, who stand firm against Lukashenko's regime, support our movement, and continue to accept Belarusians fleeing the terror. And of course, big thanks to the European Commission, in particular President Ursula von der Leyen, Commissioner Marta Kos, and High Representative Kaja Kallas for their steadfast support to Belarusian media, civil society, and human rights defenders, and for pledging the €3 billion plan, which we will implement after democratic change. You know, change may not come in a single day, but I know it will come for sure. You know, today we are building the rails of that change so that one day we can place Belarus on the right track, European track, that no Russia and no Lukashenko can ever block again. And yes, I believe that Belarus will be a success story, and we will all write this story together. Dear friends, for 5 years I was coming to this chamber with a portrait of my husband. He was in Lukashenko's prison, isolated, starved, denied a voice. 3 months ago, when I saw him for the first time, I could barely recognize him. He had lost 60 kilos and looked like he returned from the Gulag. But you know what? The next morning he told me, "Now let's get to work." And this is the essence of Belarus: beaten, this is the essence of Belarus: beaten, exhausted, but never broken. Sergey brought the new energy and strength to our movement. He is also catching up with new reality. While he was behind bars, he missed our inspiring protests. He missed migration crisis, brutal repressions, and the beginning of the war. And he even missed his own Sakharov Prize ceremony. Of course, Sergey's release is my personal joy. But I cannot fully rejoice while thousands of families remain divided. While Ales Belyatsky cannot kiss his wife, while our brave Masha, Maria Kolesnikova, cannot hug her father, while wives write letters to nowhere, while children fall asleep without their parents' lullaby, Sergey's release is not a miracle. He is free thanks to you, your words, your pressure, and your solidarity. It was you who, for all these years, kept fighting for Sergey and release of other political prisoners. His release proved that everything is possible if we are bold, consistent, and patient. And it is a joint effort, a synergy of European pressure and American diplomacy. Here I want to commend President Trump and his team. It was a remarkable humanitarian operation that saved 70 people. President Trump has now gone further. He has demanded from Lukashenko the release of all 1,300 political hostages: students, teachers, doctors, factory workers, journalists. And we all pray to see more people free soon, including our common hero, Andrzej Pochobut. However, let's not be fooled by Lukashenko's so-called humanity. Let's not be naive. He releases 60 and immediately arrests 120. You know, it is like a revolving door. Even those pardoned are not completely free. Deported without documents, handicapped, a sack over their head. Their families, still in Belarus, are harassed by the KGB. Those who refuse to leave, like Mykola Statkevich, leader of the Belarusian Social Democrats, are thrown back to prison. For Lukashenko, people are nothing but bargaining chips. He wants sanctions lifted, he wants legitimizations, he dreams of returning to business as usual, but we have seen this movie before. The same show for 30 years, and we all know how it ends. Repression continues not because the regime is strong, but because it is weak, because people despise him. The dictator knows the moment repression stops, Belarusians will rise again. And yes, the parliamentarian sanctions do work, no matter what the regime's apologists say. We see it already. Sanctions force the regime to make concessions and to release people. The regime's economy is stagnating. The deficit keeps growing. He survives primarily on the war contracts from Russia. That is why it's not time to ease pressure. It is time to push harder and to demand more. And here I propose a two-track approach. While the US focuses on the humanitarian track, on releasing people and ending repression, I call on the European Union to stay firm and principled. Let the US sanctions serve to save people's lives, but the EU sanctions must aim for systemic and irreversible change in Belarus. So keep the pressure until the regime stops jailing all people, stops blackmailing Europe with migrants, stops arming Russia's war, and Belarus starts the path towards democracy. Your cards are stronger, and hold them until the right moment. Don't be naive. Lukashenko will never change himself, but the country around him has already changed. The majority of Belarusians have chosen peace, democracy, and European future. And this future is impossible as long as Lukashenko remains in power. But even those around him, nomenclatura, are whispering about transition. Everyone understands change is inevitable. Many once believed that the Berlin Wall would stand forever, just as some now believe that dictatorship in Belarus will never fall. But it will. The dictator's time is ticking. Lukashenko is becoming a lame duck. This is what we must prepare for, post-Lukashenko Belarus. We must make sure that not only Belarus is ready, but that Europe is ready when the moment comes. To do that, we must keep pro-European spirit alive inside the country, through more contacts, exchanges, and visas for ordinary Belarusians, open borders, cultural initiatives that strengthen national identity, through stronger support for independent media, such as our leading outlets, Zerkala, Belsat, Nasha Niva, or Radio Free Europe, reaching millions inside Belarus, through strengthening our democratic institutions, ready to assume responsibility when the window of opportunity opens. We already developed a set of reforms, our own European roadmap, to ensure that Belarus moves towards democracy and to prevent Russia from taking over. But the first thing we need is free and fair elections. And let me remind you, 5 years ago, we already won elections by a landslide, and be sure we will win it again. But before all of that, one thing is paramount. Ukraine must win. We admire President Zelensky and the bravery of Ukrainian people. They are fighting not only for their own land, they fight for all of us. Ukraine's success will open a path for all our nations living in the shadow of the empire, not only for Belarus, but also Armenia, Georgia, and Moldova. We Belarusians stand with Ukraine not only in words, but in deeds. Among our political prisoners, there are hundreds of heroes sentenced for solidarity with Ukraine, sabotaging Russian troops, and sharing information. As we speak, Belarusian volunteers from Tihanovski regiment are fighting shoulder to shoulder with Ukrainians on the front lines. And they asked me to pass one message, the same one I heard from Roberta 5 years ago. Don't give up, Europe. When Ukraine is strong, Europe united, and Russia weakened, change in Belarus will become only a matter of time. And this change can spark change in Russia too. So today I urge you, give Ukraine everything they need, not just to sustain, but to win. I urge you, weaken Putin by sanctioning his oil revenues and confiscating his assets. The weaker Russia becomes, the weaker Lukashenko is. I urge you, bring perpetrators to justice, not only Putin, but also Lukashenko with his cronies. Support Lithuanian referral to International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity. Never before we were so close to opening the case. And while keeping pressure on the regime, support our people, those inside the country and in exile. Thousands of Belarusians in the European Union became de facto stateless, without documents, and face transnational repressions. So invest into people, not dictators, because military power alone means nothing without people ready to defend their values. And I urge you, see Belarus not only as a threat, but as an opportunity to change the status quo and weaken Russia's presence on your eastern flank. So do not be afraid of dictators. Let's make them afraid. Dear friends, all the things I was saying today are already in your resolution to be voted on today. I deeply appreciate all the authors and groups who have contributed. It sends a clear message to the Belarusian people. You are not alone. But also to the regime. We see your crimes. It lays a solid foundation for a proactive EU strategy on Belarus aimed to achieve solid and irreversible change. I will take this resolution to every government I meet, but above all, I will make sure that people inside the country see it and know that Europe stands with Belarus. So, dear Parliament, in conclusion, let me say a few words in Belarusian. First, because I want our message to be heard in the European Parliament, and second, because I want to address my fellow Belarusians watching online.
Dear Belarusians, fellow Belarusians, those who are inside the country and those who are outside Belarus, who fled Belarus, never lose your hope. No, give up. Never give up. And obey to your principles. Be strong with your principles. As Alice Belatsky said, I know, because I believe, because I know that the night is over and the day comes, and I know that moves us forward. It is our hope and our dream. When we are together, when we believe, when we work for the sake of the changes, we will overcome, we will win.
To meet my personal hero, Sergey Tihanovski, the man to whom I'm grateful with all my heart for all he did and endured. After all, it was for him that I became an accidental politician. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my husband, Sergey Tihanovski.
So thank you very much, dear Sviatlana. And now, after 5 long years of imprisonment in which this House has consistently called for your freedom, it gives us all a great pleasure to give the floor and hear Sergey Tihanovski. Please go ahead.
Ladies, gentlemen, and respected guests, I'm not a professional diplomat. I'm still learning. So please allow me to speak frankly, with little political correctness, just like General Kellogg did recently. This is what he said, commenting his recent trips to Belarus. Quote, "We were establishing the lines of communication with Putin. We weren't going in there initially to get political prisoners out." Unquote. It is a smart tactic on behalf of American administration. I get it. Sometimes you need to talk to Mussolini before you talk to Hitler. The stakes are high. Americans are ready to pay for the services of a middleman. The middleman gets what he wants, but he gives out hostages in return. At one point of these talks, a few months ago, Lukashenko promised to release one big-name prisoner. That was my big lucky moment. At the time, my name was the most well-known in the West due to my wife's efforts. Lukashenko was trying hard to impress President Trump. That's why I got out. I managed to survive 5 years of solitary confinement in the hell of the Belarusian Gulag. Some of those I met there were not as lucky. We've been losing the best of our people. As for me, I know I would never have survived 20 years of my full sentence. Under those same conditions, the fate of Alexei Navalny was very much in store for me. There are still around 1,400 political prisoners in Belarus waiting for their turn to be free. And the number is growing by the day. We must get them all out. This issue has become my priority. But what about the country of Belarus? Is it a lost cause? During my time in prison, the dictator kept me completely isolated. No letters, no visits, no contact with the outside world. The only news I received was from state propaganda on the radio. It has been 4 months since my release, and I'm quickly catching up with the world. But it is painful to see that things have gotten worse. The business of changing regime in Belarus that I started with another leaders 5 years ago remains unfinished. In the summer of 2020, the people of Belarus showed they've had enough. The number of people which took to the streets against Lukashenko was astounding. If you were to scale up this number relative to the population in Russia, it would be the equivalent of 15 million people. No chance Putin would have survived such an open rebellion. For a short time, there was a moment we thought we could win. Some of the Lukashenko's government officials were expressing sympathy, but stayed hesitant. They didn't flip to the side of the people. Why? Because when the time came, the Russians showed up for the fight. Europeans did not. Because Europeans' hesitation, Belarus, a beautiful nation with strong Western European values, this nation which was totally ready to become a member of the EU. We were left alone, and Moscow took over. This was not only tragic and unfair, It was also a serious strategic mistake. By failing to stop Putin in Belarus, Europe made the war in Ukraine almost inevitable. Hundreds of thousands killed, billions of dollars wasted, and we don't see the end of it. Even if President Trump does the impossible and fighting stops tomorrow, a hybrid war would continue, and trillions of euros will be spent on the European defense. Just think how stupid it is. It could have cost a tiny fraction of this budget to change the game in Belarus in 2020. But that ship has sailed. So what should be done now? How do we win this war? And what role does Belarus play in this? In this complex, potentially a very long hybrid war, victory will come only to those who take the initiative. My message is simple. Europe not only needs to become an active player, Europe needs to become an active player in Belarus. Lukashenko is a cunning survivor, but he is not immortal. The transfer of power in Belarus is imminent. Here is the reality. Since 2020, the people of Belarus have not accepted the dictator. They did not love him back. They did not revolt because they are simply being wise, careful, and realistic. They understand that without any real allies, we are fighting a losing battle. Of course, Belarusians would love to join NATO, but after what happened in Ukraine, Belarusians will never believe we will ever be accepted. We are not that naive. So how we do solve this problem? What's the formula? The answer can be found in Europe's own history. Think about Finland. Think about the Finland before it joined NATO. Finland learned how to live next to a difficult neighbor and still build a successful, independent country without going to war. It was a careful balance, a smart strategy. Europe would benefit if Belarus became a neutral bridge between the EU and Russia. Belarusians would benefit as well. That would be good things for both sides, a definite win-win. But of course, Putin sees Belarus very differently. He sees it as a buffer zone, a military base he can use to pressure his neighbors, a country with limited independence, something like Chechnya, but in Central Europe. So how do we pull this? There's only one solution. We need a third player in this political game. For many decades, the United States has saved you hundreds of billions of dollars each year, holding the security umbrella, while Europeans were busy building social welfare state. But today, America cannot be fighting on all their battlefields in the Middle East, in Europe, and in Asia at the same time. It is Europe, not the United States, that should take a leading role on its eastern borders. It is Europe that should become the main partner in helping Belarus move toward democracy. You are big. You are strong. Your population is whopping 500 million. Your GDP makes up 17% of the world total. Your total spending on helping Ukraine is mere 0.1%. Something tells me you can be doing a lot more. You just need confidence. You just need leadership. You just need to get serious. We, the Belarusian democratic movement, have a plan how to become the next Finland of Eastern Europe. You have the tools, resources, and the strength to make it real. It's your call now, Europe. Don't let us down, not like the last time. Живе Belarus! Thank you very much.
Sitting is resumed. So I have a couple of announcements. Then I will have very, very short points of order. We have almost 2 hours for the vote today. So